License and registration, sir. The word sir snapped like an insult. Officer Dean McCarthy stood with one hand on his belt, the other hovering near the butt of his service weapon, sunlight bouncing off the polished badge that gave him more confidence than conscience. This isn't your neighborhood. His tone turned the phrase into a verdict. Across the hood of a silver truck, Darius Cole blinked once, steady, unhurried. He was dressed in a navy button-down, sleeves rolled, a construction company badge clipped to his chest. His voice came out low, almost gentle. "Officer," he said, "I built it." The breeze shifted. A lawn sprinkler hissed behind a row of manicured hedges. Two neighbors paused mid-dog walk, the camera of a phone tilted up from across the street, recording already. McCarthy smirked. "That right? Built it, huh? Funny, I don't remember seeing your kind at the zoning meetings." His words landed like gravel. He circled the truck, eyes scanning the interior. Leather seats, clean dashboard, a child's drawing clipped to the visor. Dad's truck. "Step out," McCarthy ordered. Darius's hands stayed visible on the steering wheel. "May I ask why?" "Because I said so." Phones lifted higher. A teenager whispered, "He didn't even do anything." McCarthy yanked the door handle. "Out. Now." Darius stepped down slowly, 6'2" and solid, posture straight but non-threatening. His calm seemed to irritate the officer more than resistance would have. "You live around here?" McCarthy asked. "I do." "Address?" 15 Treston Lane. McCarthy's eyebrows rose. "That's impossible. That's—" He stopped himself. That was the street named after the family who'd funded the neighborhood's redevelopment. The brass street sign read, Cole Drive, but the officer had never paid attention. "Got ID?" Darius handed over his license, the motion deliberate, no sudden moves. The camera phones caught every second, the tiny tremor in the air between them. McCarthy squinted at the card. "Huh, says Cole. Any relation to—" He glanced at the sign again, then forced a laugh. "What, you think they named the street after you?" Darius didn't answer. Silence has its own gravity. "Stay right here," McCarthy said, walking back toward his cruiser. He keyed the mic. "Dispatch, possible trespasser, suspicious vehicle, black male, mid-30s, claims residence on Treston." The word claims echoed like a sneer. Inside the cruiser, his partner Officer Mendez shifted uneasily. "Dean, he's not doing anything wrong." McCarthy waved him off. "You don't know these types. They rent Airbnbs for the weekend, pretend they belong." "His ID shows the same street," Mendez murmured. "Fake IDs are easy." Outside, Darius adjusted his watch, calm as ever. He could feel old lessons humming through his muscles. Every talk his father gave him about staying alive during a traffic stop. Keep your tone even, hands visible. Dignity intact. Across the cul-de-sac, more phones appeared in windows, the quiet hum of a neighborhood witnessing itself. McCarthy returned, jaw tight. "Pop the trunk." "For what reason?" "Probable cause." "What cause is that?" "The cause where I don't like being lied to," McCarthy snapped. Mendez winced. "Dean, come on." But the officer was already moving, hand hovering again near his weapon. "Open it." Darius met his eyes. "Officer, I'm asking you to slow down. Don't tell me how to do my job." The pause stretched long enough to hear the cicadas. Then Darius stepped aside. "Go ahead." The trunk clicked open. Inside, a rolled-up blueprint tube, a white hard hat, and a framed certificate half covered by a towel. McCarthy pulled it free. City of Atlanta, Community Development Grant, awarded to Darius Cole Foundation. For a heartbeat he froze, then scoffed. "Probably fake." He tossed it back in. Someone across the street called out, "That's the guy who built the rec center." Another voice joined. "Officer, you got the wrong man." McCarthy's face flushed. "Everyone mind your business." The teenager's phone caught every syllable. TikTok, live. 423 viewers. Darius finally spoke again, soft but clear. "Officer, if you're finished, I'd like to go home." "Not yet. Hands on the hood." Mendez stepped forward. "Dean!" "Back off!" McCarthy barked. Darius complied, palms flat against the sun-warmed metal. His reflection shimmered in the chrome grille, steady eyes, unbroken calm. McCarthy started the pat-down. "You know what your problem is?" Darius didn't reply. "You people think money buys belonging. You can buy a house, but not the right to be here." Darius's voice came low. "Belonging isn't bought, officer. It's built." That sentence landed heavier than a shout. Mendez muttered, "Dean, enough. Cameras are everywhere." But the senior cop wasn't listening. "Turn around!" He pulled out cuffs. Before he could close them, the whine of another engine filled the air. A white city SUV rolled to a stop, the door swinging open. Out stepped Councilwoman Erica James, phone still to her ear. "Officer McCarthy," she said sharply. "What exactly are you doing to Mr. Cole?" McCarthy blinked. You know him?" "I should. He funded half this district's redevelopment, including your precinct's parking lot." The silence that followed could have cracked glass. Mendez exhaled in relief. "Oh my God." Phones zoomed in. The crowd murmured. McCarthy's grip on the cuffs loosened. Darius slowly lowered his hands, turned and met the officer's eyes. No anger, just that same calm weight. "Have you ever watched authority collapse under its own ignorance?" That's how it began. One afternoon, one street, one sentence that would ripple through an entire department. The next morning, the story broke, but not the real one. Headline: Police officer ensures safety after suspicious stop in rebuilt neighborhood. The article's lead line blurred truth into smoke. Authorities confirmed that Officer Dean McCarthy responded appropriately during a routine inquiry involving an unidentified male in a construction vehicle. The subject was questioned and released without incident. Released without incident. No mention of the crowd. No mention of the cuffs. No mention of the councilwoman who arrived with a camera still rolling. The department's press information office moved quickly. Lieutenant Harris drafted the release before sunrise, sending it up the chain for approval. "Keep it short, no names," he muttered. "We'll call it a procedural misunderstanding." The city's early news shows ran the police version word for word. A single still image, blurred from a phone video, showed Darius's truck parked under the afternoon sun. The caption read, "Suspect questioned, cooperation appreciated." Behind closed doors, McCarthy's incident report, Year 24, 673A, painted him as the hero, observed unfamiliar vehicle idling on private road. Subject appeared nervous. Initiated stop. Possible trespass due to high-value property thefts in the area. He even added a line about cooperative demeanor to soften his language, a trick every veteran knew. He didn't mention the words, "This isn't your neighborhood." He didn't mention the cameras. By 10 a.m., the chief's office had received the first call, from Councilwoman Erica James herself. "I was there, Chief. That was not routine." Chief Donovan's sigh crackled through the receiver. "Erica, let's not make this political." "It's not political," she said. "It's systemic." He promised a review, but his tone carried the weight of old habits: contain, minimize, move on. Across town, Darius Cole sat at his kitchen counter, sipping black coffee, watching the story twist itself on the local channel. His phone buzzed nonstop. Texts from employees, community leaders, donors. "We saw what happened. Are you okay?" He typed one line back to each. "Fine. Working on something." His living room smelled faintly of cedar and new paint, the same materials he donated to rebuild the neighborhood. On the wall, a framed aerial photograph showed the district before the renovation. Cracked sidewalks, boarded houses, stray power lines tangled like roots. Beneath it, another photograph. The same street, now paved, lit, thriving. That photo would soon matter more than anyone imagined. Meanwhile, in the precinct's conference room, the mood was sour. Officer Mendez sat stiff-backed as Internal Affairs began its preliminary inquiry. "Let's go over it again," Investigator Russell said. "Did you witness any use of force?" "No," Mendez said. "Verbal only. Was the subject cooperative?" "Yes." "Did you believe he was trespassing?" A pause. "No." Russell scribbled something, nodded, and shut the folder. "That'll be all for now." When Mendez left, Russell looked to his colleague. "He's honest. The senior officer's the problem." McCarthy, meanwhile, was sitting in the break room, elbows on knees, his badge on the table in front of him like a mirror he didn't want to face. "You think this'll blow over?" he asked another patrolman. "It always does," came the reply. But that was before the second video surfaced. Posted under the tag, "This is your neighborhood," the footage captured everything. The tone, the finger point, the moment Darius said, "I built it." By noon, it had 480,000 views. The mayor's office called the police chief within the hour. "We can't spin this," the communications director said flatly. "He's not just some guy. He's the donor who funded the public library project. His name's on the community board plaque." Donovan's jaw clenched. "Get me McCarthy's full record." The file arrived in 10 minutes. 12 complaints over 15 years. All dismissed or inconclusive. That afternoon, reporters began camping outside the precinct gates. McCarthy tried sneaking out the side exit, but cameras caught him anyway. "Officer, care to comment on the viral video?" No comment. "Did you know the man you detained built that neighborhood?" "Step back," he barked. The clip ran on loop that night. Angry cop in daylight. No remorse, no apology. At the same time, the department's PR team prepared a new statement. Their language surgical. "We are aware of an interaction involving one of our officers. The department values diversity, respect, and professionalism. An internal review is underway. Every word screamed control without confession. But inside the community, a different narrative spread, one built on first-hand truth." Parents replayed the video for their children. Teachers used it in civics lessons. Church leaders invoked it in sermons about humility. The more the department tried to quiet it, the louder it became. By midnight, Darius received a call from the city's deputy mayor for development. "Darius, the mayor wants to meet privately. Tomorrow morning." "Tell her I'll bring the paperwork," Darius said. "What paperwork?" "The deed records. The ones showing the donation to the city, including the street." The next morning, while McCarthy drafted a corrected version of his report, adding vague phrases like "subject later identified as local philanthropist," Darius placed 3 certified documents on the mayor's desk. Each bore his signature, the city's seal, and one unshakable fact. Cole Drive existed because he gave it to them. The mayor leaned back, stunned. "Why didn't you say something at the scene?" Darius's answer was quiet. "I wanted to see what would happen if I didn't have a title." Outside City Hall, reporters shouted questions at McCarthy as he walked toward his cruiser. One asked, "Is it true the man you detained owns part of this neighborhood?" McCarthy kept walking, jaw locked, but the silence said everything. By the third day, the city's official story had started to crumble, not because anyone confessed, but because the evidence refused to disappear. The Office of Civil Oversight received 3 separate videos that morning, each from a different angle, each time stamped within seconds of each other. Camera 2, timestamp, 16:41:23. The teen's phone from across the street. Camera 4, timestamp, 16:41:25. The councilwoman's live stream from her dashboard. Camera 7, timestamp, 16:42:01. The neighbor's security feed, automatically backed up to cloud storage. Together, they created a perfect triangulation. The city's IT division pieced the clips together under chain of custody file 1023A. When synchronized, they formed a seamless 3-minute timeline of the entire confrontation, from McCarthy's first approach to Erica James's arrival. The footage spoke for itself. No commentary. No editing. At 16:40:09, McCarthy's cruiser stopped behind Darius's truck. At 16:40:14, he exited the vehicle, hand already resting near his weapon. At 16:41:02, his voice registered on the microphones. distorted but unmistakable. "This isn't your neighborhood." At 16:42:19, Darius's calm reply, "Officer, I built it." At 16:43:7, Councilwoman James arrived. At 16:44:33, the officer's cuffs were visible in his hand. That was the moment the department lost plausible deniability. Internal Affairs Report, IA 451. Officer Dean McCarthy displayed conduct unbecoming. Failure to follow de-escalation protocol, violation of policy number 8.2 on community policing, and disregard of rule number 4.5, non-biased enforcement. Recommendation, immediate administrative leave pending review. But behind the scenes, the union lawyer was already building a counter-narrative. Officer McCarthy acted on instinct during a tense situation in an unfamiliar development, she argued. The subject's identity was not known at the time. This was a misunderstanding, not misconduct. She didn't mention that McCarthy had patrolled the same zone for 6 years, or that the unfamiliar development was his own patrol route. At 2 p.m., Chief Donovan convened an emergency meeting in room 204A, Command Review Board. The walls were lined with framed commendations. None of them looked reassuring under the fluorescent lights. "Body cam footage?" the mayor's aide asked. McCarthy shifted in his seat. "Body cam malfunctioned." "Malfunctioned?" He hesitated. "Battery failure." The technician cleared his throat. "Sir, our diagnostics show the device was manually powered off at 16:39:55. A silence followed long enough to hear the ceiling fan tick. "Who turned it off?" McCarthy said nothing. The mayor's aide looked to the chief. "That is a felony obstruction under State Statute 3218C. Donovan exhaled. "We'll handle it internally." "Not this time," Darius's attorney said, stepping into the room. Jonathan Reed, Civil Rights Counsel for the Cole Foundation, had already filed a public records request, FOIA 21887, demanding every second of footage, every radio log, every body cam entry. Reed's tone was professional but unyielding. The footage was off by design. The public deserves to know why. Outside, the protests began to swell. By sunset, 50 residents stood on Cole Drive holding signs that read, "Built, not borrowed." Accountability lives here. News vans lined the curb. Drone cameras hovered overhead, live-streaming the irony of a neighborhood built by a black philanthropist being patrolled by an officer who didn't believe he belonged there. Darius didn't speak to the press, not yet. He preferred silence to spectacle. At home, he opened the same blueprint tube the officer had dismissed days earlier. Inside was the original zoning map from 2011, streets redlined in heavy pink marker. His father's old neighborhood was inside that border, a place the city once called too high risk for investment. Darius had redrawn it, literally, street by street. He placed the map next to the new one. Wide sidewalks, modern lighting, parks named after civil rights leaders. The contrast was stunning. The irony, devastating. That night, he wrote a short statement for his legal team. "This is not about me. This is about every resident who has ever been told they do not belong in a place they helped build." It was 12 words long. The next morning, those words appeared on every major outlet in Atlanta. Meanwhile, in the precinct, Mendez sat alone at his desk, watching the compiled footage on mute. He had replayed that 3-minute video 50 times, counting every protocol breach, 12 by his estimate. He wrote each down in his notebook: failure to greet or identify, lack of probable cause, escalation without justification, disabling body cam, use of condescending language. The list ran off the page. He looked around the room at his colleagues, most avoiding eye contact. For years they'd joked about McCarthy moments. Now none were laughing. When the sergeant passed by, Mendez closed the notebook. "Sir, I'd like to make an official statement." "You sure about that?" "Yes, sir." It took courage to cross the blue line, but something about that day had shifted the gravity. The following week, the City Council's Oversight Committee convened in open session. Councilwoman James presented Evidence Exhibit 4B, the video timeline, the FOIA documents, and a spreadsheet listing past complaints. Each row represented one ignored citizen. Each column, another failure to correct. As the room filled with reporters, the mayor read the department's new pledge aloud. We cannot protect communities we do not understand, and we cannot serve citizens we do not respect. In the second row, Darius sat quietly, eyes steady, expression unreadable. For the first time, Officer McCarthy was not the center of attention. His own department was. The investigation had turned inward. By the end of that week, Internal Affairs completed its preliminary report. Findings for policy violations confirmed, pending charges under review, body cam tampering under criminal referral recommended, suspension without pay, but something deeper had shifted. The city's reform group, the Cole Initiative, announced a new collaboration. Officers would undergo community familiarization walks, 2 days per month spent walking the very neighborhoods they patrolled, meeting residents by name, not by suspicion. Darius didn't ask for the policy. He simply suggested it during a quiet meeting with the mayor. The mayor said, "You're turning humiliation into reform." He replied, "That's what justice looks like when it grows up." By the time the Oversight Committee hearing entered its second week, the city knew his name, but not his story. That was about to change. Councilwoman Erica James adjusted the microphone, her voice measured. "Next speaker, Mr. Darius Cole." The room fell still. Reporters leaned forward. McCarthy sat 3 rows back, plain clothes now, hands folded so tightly they trembled. Darius stood, walked calmly to the table, and placed a folder before the committee. No entourage, no lawyers, just him. "Good afternoon," he said. "I was asked to share context." He opened the folder. Inside were deeds, zoning blueprints, and receipts, real ones. Document 12A, Cole Development Trust Deed, Parcel Transfer, June 2021. Document 13C, Municipal Donation Receipt, Infrastructure, Fund for Public Street Cole Drive. Document 14F, Council Resolution, Honorary, naming of the Cole Community Center. He slid them forward. These are the official records of ownership transfer and civic donation for the neighborhood in question. A murmur rippled through the room. The committee clerk lifted the papers, eyes wide. "These are notarized and archived. They're legitimate." "Yes," Darius said quietly. "I did not correct Officer McCarthy when he told me I didn't belong because I wanted to see what that word, belonging, meant to the people enforcing it." A few reporters exchanged glances, typing rapidly. He continued, voice low but resonant. "For years, I've donated anonymously to city redevelopment projects, schools, streetlights, housing programs. I didn't want my name to matter, but that moment proved it still does." He paused, allowing silence to do its work. "Because I'm not the only one who's been told they don't belong in a place they helped build. I'm just the one you happen to record." The committee chair, an older man named Councilman Rayford, leaned in. "Mr. Cole, are you implying systemic discrimination?" "I'm stating it plainly," Darius replied. He tapped the blueprint he'd brought. "This was a redlined zone until 2015. Banks refused loans. City funds disappeared in paperwork. The only way to rebuild it was to create a foundation that could outlast prejudice. And now, that same prejudice patrols it with a badge." The statement wasn't loud, but it carried the clarity of evidence. McCarthy looked down at his hands. Every sound in the chamber felt magnified. The scratch of a pen, the hum of the AC, the click of cameras. For a man who had spent 2 decades speaking with authority, he now found words impossible. In front of him, Darius continued calmly. "I'm not asking for punishment. I'm asking for education, for reform. Because accountability without transformation is just theater." He turned to face the officers seated behind the council rows, the same uniform that had handcuffed him days ago. "I don't hate the badge. My father wore one once, before the system wore him down." That line hit harder than any accusation. Councilwoman James leaned forward. "Mr. Cole, what would justice look like to you?" He thought for a moment. "Justice," he said, "is when the next man who looks like me doesn't need a viral video to be believed." Gasps, then applause, soft at first, then building, restrained but sincere. The chairman called for order, but even he couldn't hide the faint smile of recognition. Something historic had just happened. Outside the chamber, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Cole, do you plan to sue?" "No." "Will you press charges for misconduct?" He stopped on the steps, sunlight glinting off his watch. "No," he said again. "Because lawsuits fix paper. I want to fix people." The clip went viral by nightfall, not because of outrage, but because of calm. His composure felt revolutionary in a world addicted to anger. The headline read, "Man detained in his own neighborhood educates the city he built." At the precinct, McCarthy sat in a windowless office, listening to the playback on a laptop. His lawyer had warned him not to comment, but he couldn't look away. Every sentence from Darius landed like a verdict. He remembered the smirk, the finger pointing, the phrase he'd spat without thinking. "This isn't your neighborhood." Now the irony was carved into public record. He closed the laptop and pressed his palms to his eyes. His partner Mendez knocked once and entered. "They're recommending a hearing," Mendez said quietly. "Internal Affairs wants testimony from everyone present that day, including me," McCarthy's voice cracked. "You're going to testify?" "I have to," Mendez said. "You crossed the line." "We all saw it." McCarthy didn't argue. For the first time, he didn't have a defense. 3 days later, the official disciplinary hearing took place. McCarthy's badge sat on the table. His record, 15 years of mixed commendations and ignored complaints, was projected on the wall. Policy number 4.5, non-biased enforcement violated. Policy number 7.1, body cam compliance violated. State Statute 3218C, pending review. Chief Donovan opened the session with a brittle voice. "Officer McCarthy, do you have anything to say before this board?" McCarthy looked up. His eyes were red but steady. "I disrespected a man who deserved my protection," he said. "And I disrespected this badge. I can't undo that, but I can tell the truth." He turned toward Darius, seated quietly in the audience. "I thought I was protecting a neighborhood, but I was policing a stereotype." Silence again, thick but cleansing. The board chair nodded. "The department will deliberate." When the verdict came, it was swift. Termination effective immediately. Referral for mandatory bias and ethics training for all precinct officers within 60 days. McCarthy didn't protest. He simply nodded, stood, and walked out past Darius, who rose and extended a hand. For a second, McCarthy froze. Then he shook it. The gesture wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. That night, Darius walked the same street where it began. The streetlight glowed over the Cole Drive sign, the metal still new. Kids rode scooters down the smooth pavement he'd funded. A neighbor waved. "Mr. Cole, the whole city's talking about you." He smiled faintly. "Hopefully they're talking about what we can fix." The camera of a bystander caught the moment. One man, one street, one quiet victory. The caption that trended beneath it read, "Justice is built." The city's silence didn't last long. By the end of the week, truth began to surface, not as outrage, but as data. Cold, undeniable data. A leak appeared first on a civic watchdog site called Open Metro, a platform that specialized in public records. The headline read, 15 years of misconduct hidden in plain sight. The article attached internal report Thumberger 9F112, a 67-page audit obtained under Freedom of Information request 21887. It listed every complaint filed against Officer Dean McCarthy from 2008 to 2024. Total complaints, 27 sustained findings, 0 dismissed or closed. 27A heat map in the document showed all 27 incidents occurred in neighborhoods with over 70% black population density. Across the city's north and west zones, McCarthy's patrol routes formed a pattern like a scar across the map. When asked to comment, Chief Donovan said, "Many of those were investigated under prior leadership." Translation, buried, but the numbers spoke louder than press statements. Between 2013 and 2021, Metro City paid out $4.3 million in civil settlements tied to unwarranted stops and verbal misconduct. Of those, 68% involved officers from McCarthy's division. A follow-up investigation by the Herald Tribune cross-referenced complaint logs with demographic data. Their conclusion: Black residents were 3.2 times more likely to be stopped, 5 times more likely to be searched, and 7 times more likely to be detained without citation within Metro City limits. Then came the body cam audit. A technical review revealed that McCarthy had disabled his camera 11 times over a 6-month span, always during interactions in black neighborhoods. The department's own internal system flagged those events as manual shutdowns, but no discipline followed. Internal memo, Body Cam Compliance Report, March 2023, recommend further review. Officer claims battery issues on multiple occasions. Supervisor sign-off approved. Case closed. The problem wasn't just one officer, it was an ecosystem of approval. In the hearing that followed, Councilwoman Erica James summarized it perfectly. This isn't a bad apple problem, it's an orchard without oversight. The FBI's Civil Rights Division entered quietly, citing Title 18 U.S.C. Para 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. Their subpoena covered 5 years of disciplinary records, dashcam logs, and settlement agreements. For the first time in the city's history, a federal team walked through the precinct doors. When the chief asked how long the audit would take, the lead agent replied, "As long as it takes to rebuild trust." Meanwhile, Darius's foundation began compiling its own report, the Cole Commission. He hired data analysts, legal experts, and community members to document every known case of racial profiling within city limits. It wasn't revenge. It was Research.Cole Commission Report. Preliminary findings: 243 verified complaints of discriminatory policing over 12 years. 9% of complainants faced retaliation or intimidation. 2% lost jobs due to delayed citations or false arrests. Deaths tied indirectly to unlawful stops or escalations. Each name carried a timestamp, a badge number, a street corner. One case stood out. Case number 17404, Anthony Baines, detained for loitering while delivering tools. Same officer, same tone, same words. This isn't your neighborhood. That incident happened 4 years before Darius's, and it never reached the news. The city's legal department scrambled to contain the fallout. They proposed settlements, confidentiality clauses, non-disclosure agreements. But the Cole Foundation refused hush money. Instead, Darius proposed something different, a public reform plan. His proposal, Project Restoration, outlined a roadmap for accountability. Body Cam Transparency Act. All footage automatically uploads to an independent cloud server. Community Oversight Board, 9 citizens chosen by lottery, granted full access to internal affairs findings. Restorative Justice Program, officers must meet with community members in monthly dialogue circles. Annual Equity Audit, mandatory publication of stops, arrests, and demographic breakdowns. The city had no choice but to consider it, because the world was watching. Major networks ran the story under variations of the same headline. Officer suspended, city under federal review after donor's detainment. But one program, Metro 9 Investigates, went further. Their team traced the very street where the confrontation occurred and uncovered a forgotten zoning file. City Resolution 2015-84B, Public Dedication of Cole Drive, Philanthropic Redevelopment Zone. The reporter faced the camera. This street legally belongs to the city, because Darius Cole gave it to them, and the officer who told him he didn't belong was standing on his gift. The line trended globally within hours. McCarthy's lawyer tried to claim stress, faulty training, and emotional fatigue. But every justification collapsed under timestamps, recordings, and receipts. At the disciplinary review, the FBI agent presented a spreadsheet. Exhibit F, Complaint Escalation Patterns. Each row was a name, each column a year, each cell a silent failure. You didn't just violate a man's dignity, the agent said. You violated a pattern that should have been corrected a decade ago. The room stayed silent. Even the chief's hands trembled slightly as he signed the cooperation agreement with federal oversight. Outside, life in the neighborhood began to move differently. Officers walked, not patrolled. They waved to kids, learned names, stood under the same streetlights they once scanned suspiciously. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, least of all Darius. He told a reporter quietly, "Sometimes receipts hurt more than rage." By the end of the month, the U.S. Department of Justice formally announced Federal Oversight Order DOCR 2025 MC-12, mandating reforms for Metro City Police. It was the first such order in the state's history. The same city that had once redlined, its citizens now stood under federal supervision to ensure equality. And the street where it all began, Cole Drive, became the launch point for new beginnings. The air outside Metro City Hall felt different that morning. Not tense, expectant. A week had passed since the federal oversight order, and the city was preparing for its first public accountability hearing. Rows of news vans lined the street. Cameramen tested mics. Reporters rehearsed their lines under the grand white columns. Inside, the main chamber had been rearranged. For once, the officers didn't sit above the citizens. They sat beside them. At the front of the room, Chief Donovan faced the microphone. His badge looked smaller under the overhead light. "Today," he began, "we acknowledge a failure that belongs to all of us." His voice trembled slightly. "For too long, we have measured policing by arrests and control, not by trust and understanding. That changes now." He paused, then gestured toward Darius, who sat 2 rows back, his posture calm, his expression unreadable. "This department owes Mr. Cole and every resident of this city an apology and a promise. The apology is easy. The promise will take work." A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Behind Darius, an older woman whispered to her granddaughter, "That's him, baby. That's the man they stopped." The girl whispered back, "He doesn't look mad." "No," the woman said softly. "He looks like he already won." The council clerk called the first witness, Officer Dean McCarthy. He walked forward slowly, wearing a plain gray suit that didn't quite fit. His once bright eyes looked dulled by sleepless nights. "Officer McCarthy," the chair began, "you've had time to review the findings of the internal and federal investigations. Do you wish to make a statement before the board votes on disciplinary actions?" McCarthy nodded, throat tight. "Yes." He adjusted the microphone, exhaled, and began. "I thought I understood service. I thought protecting this neighborhood meant defending it from people who didn't belong. But I was wrong about who didn't belong." The room went still. He swallowed hard, continuing. "When I saw Mr. Cole, I didn't see a man. I saw a story I made up in my head, a threat that wasn't there. I disrespected him, and I disrespected every officer who actually wears this badge with honor." He looked up for the first time, eyes locking on Darius. "You could have ruined me, and you didn't. You asked for reform instead. That will haunt me longer than punishment." He stepped back. His voice cracked on the final line. "For what it's worth." "Thank you," reporters scribbled furiously. The click of camera shutters echoed off the marble. The council chair cleared his throat. "Officer McCarthy, per federal oversight, you are officially terminated from the Metro City Police Department effective immediately. Further criminal proceedings are pending review." McCarthy nodded. No protest, no denial, just quiet resignation. As he turned to leave, Darius stood. The crowd held its breath. Darius extended his hand once more, the same calm gesture as before. For a moment, it seemed McCarthy might ignore it. Then he took it. The handshake wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement that a man's worth isn't determined by his worst day, but by what he learns from it. As McCarthy exited, reporters swarmed him. "Do you feel remorse?" one shouted. He didn't answer. But his silence said enough. Inside the chamber, the next agenda item began. Departmental reforms. Immediate action. Councilwoman Erica James presented the new policies one by one. Her voice was steady, resolute. Policy number 12.1, Independent Civilian Oversight Board, passed unanimously. Policy number 14.6, Bias Training Certification Renewal, every 6 months, passed. Policy number 15.9, Community Familiarization Walks, passed. Each gavel strike sounded like closure. When the vote ended, the chamber erupted into applause, not wild or celebratory, but measured, meaningful. This wasn't triumph. It was transformation. After the session, outside City Hall, a cluster of microphones waited for Darius. A journalist called out, "Mr. Cole, how does it feel to finally see justice?" Darius paused. The afternoon light caught his face, softening the lines of exhaustion. "It doesn't feel like victory," he said. "It feels like work. Real justice doesn't end with one story. It begins there." "Do you forgive Officer McCarthy?" another asked. He smiled faintly. "Forgiveness is personal, but accountability is public, and we just took a step toward both." As he turned away, the crowd parted, not for fame, but for respect. A child reached out to shake his hand. A teacher thanked him for showing what calm power looks like. Someone placed a small flower at the base of the Cole Drive sign. By nightfall, that flower became a pile. By morning, it became a garden. The next week, Metro News Channel 8 aired a documentary-style segment, The Street That Changed the City. It opened with body cam timestamps, faux IA receipts, and clips from the oversight hearing. But the final image wasn't Darius or McCarthy. It was the new police academy classroom, filled with recruits watching the footage as part of their ethics training. Their instructor said softly, "This isn't about blame. It's about awareness. The badge is not armor. It's responsibility." Later that night, Darius drove home under the glow of the streetlights he'd funded. He stopped briefly at the corner. The new sign read, "Cole Drive, dedicated to community builders past and present." He smiled. Then quietly, he said to himself, "Now it belongs to everyone." 3 months later, spring lights spilled across the newly renovated Cole Community Center, the same building that once stood half-finished and forgotten. Now, it was alive. Children's voices echoed from the playground out front. Inside, the gym buzzed with a small fair. Local vendors, volunteers, police officers in soft uniforms with no weapons, only radios and smiles. A banner hung across the main hall, Neighborhood Open Forum, Building Trust. One story at a time. It wasn't a government event. It was a community one. The first hosted jointly by the Cole Foundation and Metro City Police Department. At a long folding table, Councilwoman Erica James checked attendance lists while Chief Donovan, noticeably older but calmer, poured coffee for guests. He looked over to Darius, who stood near the mural that now covered the east wall. A painting of hands building a bridge, painted by local kids. "Never thought I'd see this day," Donovan said softly. Darius smiled. It had to start somewhere. Nearby, Officer Luis Mendez handed out pamphlets titled, "Know Your Rights, Know Your Officers." Each page listed new reforms implemented since the oversight order. All body cams auto-upload to third-party cloud bias. Training tied to promotion eligibility. Community. Feedback required in annual. Evaluations, anonymous complaint hotline, managed by civilians. The reforms weren't just promises, they were policies. Signed and active. As the day unfolded, Darius walked through the center's corridors, shaking hands, listening to stories. An elderly man approached him holding a folded newspaper. "You're the reason I got my record expunged," the man said, voice thick with emotion. "They stopped me years ago for walking home from work. Never thought I'd live to see the system say sorry." Darius shook his hand. "You deserved that apology a long time ago." In another corner, a circle of new police recruits sat with local teens, trading questions. "Why do you want to be a cop?" one teen asked. "To help," said the young officer, nervous but honest. The teen nodded. "Then don't forget what help looks like." Mendez watched from the back, quietly proud. He had joined the department's integrity unit, created as part of the reform package. His job now was to train others to make sure silence never replaced conscience again. The event's highlight came at noon when Darius took the stage. No spotlight, no teleprompter, just him and a microphone. "I built these walls once," he began, gesturing around him. "But I was wrong about what made them strong. It wasn't the bricks or the steel, it was the people willing to fill them with something better than fear." He paused. The crowd leaned in. When the incident happened months ago, I thought I'd lost something. My dignity, my peace, maybe even my faith. But the truth is I found something else. Proof that change doesn't need anger to start. It just needs clarity. Applause rippled through the room. Not wild, but sincere. From the back row, Chief Donovan stood, then surprised everyone by approaching the stage. He cleared his throat, his voice unsteady. "Mr. Cole," he said, "on behalf of this department and personally, I want to apologize." The room fell silent. Cameras clicked once, then stopped. "This badge means service," Donovan continued, holding it up. "But somewhere along the way, we started thinking service meant control. You reminded us that it means humility." He extended the badge toward Darius, not as a symbol of guilt, but of respect. Darius didn't take it. Instead, he pushed it gently back toward Donovan. "Keep it," he said quietly. "You'll need it to rebuild." The crowd rose to its feet. Later that afternoon, as people drifted outside, the mayor arrived unannounced, flanked by 2 reporters. She approached Darius with a small envelope. "The city council voted this morning," she said. "Cole Drive will be renamed Cole Avenue of Equity. It's symbolic, but sometimes symbols matter." Darius smiled faintly. "Only if the promise behind them stays." "It will," she said. "We've signed the funding for permanent oversight and scholarship programs for underrepresented youth entering public service." That evening, the sun dipped low over the city skyline. The newly renamed avenue shimmered under warm orange light. Kids rode their bikes down smooth asphalt while neighbors talked on porches. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, visible, audible, real. Inside his home office, Darius opened a file labeled Project Restoration Phase 2. It outlined expansion plans, not just for his city, but for 10 others. He typed one final note at the bottom of the proposal. "Justice cannot be built by laws alone. It requires people willing to face themselves." He signed it quietly, D. Cole. Across town, at a modest apartment, Dean McCarthy sat at a kitchen table covered in job applications. On the wall above him hung a letter from the Community Reconciliation Program, the one Darius had suggested. The letter read, "You have been accepted as a participant. Assigned to mentorship under Mr. Luis Mendez, Integrity Unit. Focus, restorative community work." He exhaled slowly. It wasn't redemption, not yet. But it was a beginning. He looked out the window where 2 kids played basketball on the new public court, part of the Cole Initiative. For the first time in months, McCarthy allowed himself to hope that service could mean something different. The next morning, he arrived early at the community center. He carried folding chairs, handed out water bottles, stayed quiet. When Darius arrived, he nodded once. No words. Just acknowledgement. 2 men. Different pasts. The same neighborhood. Both rebuilding something invisible but necessary. As the camera panned out over the city, the narrator's voice returned. Calm, reflective, final. "Some stories don't end with punishment. They end with perspective. Because the truest form of justice isn't vengeance. It's restoration. One man's humility rebuilt a department. One city's reckoning rebuilt its soul." 6 months later, the city looked different. Not perfect, but awake. Police cruisers now carried new decals. Serve, listen, protect. Simple words. But they marked a shift in language and in practice. At the Cole Avenue of Equity, the old red-lined map had been turned into a permanent mural. Pink borders fading into bright gold lines that symbolized rebuilt hope. Tourists stopped to photograph it. Students on field trips traced their fingers along the painted streets. This wasn't a monument to tragedy. It was a blueprint for progress. Inside the Cole Community Center, a plaque hung near the entrance, dedicated to every voice that refused silence. Built by those who believed belonging is not permission. It's birthright. Underneath the inscription, two names, Darius Cole and Officer Dean McCarthy. Because transformation, Darius had said, wasn't about erasing the guilty. It was about including the changed. Every Friday afternoon, the center hosted restorative dialogue sessions, citizens and officers sitting side by side, no uniforms, no ranks. They talked about fear, bias, respect, and small ways to make it better. Sometimes they argued. Sometimes they cried, but they kept coming back. Officer Mendez led most of the sessions. McCarthy rarely spoke, but when he did, people listened. "When you wear the badge long enough," he once said, "you start thinking it makes you right. But it's just a mirror. It shows who you really are when no one's watching." The crowd had been silent for a full minute after that. Meanwhile, Darius continued his work quietly. His foundation partnered with 12 cities, advising them on equity programs and civilian oversight boards. The model he helped build in Metro City: community forums, transparent audits, shared accountability, began spreading nationwide. It came to be known as the Cole Framework. CNN ran a segment titled, "From Handcuffs to Hope, the Man Who Rebuilt Trust." But Darius rarely gave interviews. He always redirected the spotlight back to the people. "One man can expose injustice," he said, "but it takes a community to repair it." One night he returned home to find a letter in his mailbox. No return address, just a folded piece of paper with neat handwriting. "Mr. Cole, I wanted you to know I've been sober for 4 months. I volunteer twice a week at the community garden. My daughter told me she's proud of me again. Thank you for not giving up on me when I didn't deserve it. Dean." Darius sat at his kitchen table for a long time, reading those lines over and over. He smiled, not with pride, but with peace. The next morning, he walked down Cole Avenue. The air was clear, the sidewalks alive with movement. 2 police officers helped a man load groceries into his car. A child on a scooter waved and shouted, "Hi, Mr. Cole!" He waved back. Passing the mural, he noticed a new addition. Someone had painted a small phrase in the corner, in white script. "Justice lives here." He didn't know who added it. He didn't need to. Later that month, the National Forum on Civic Reform invited him to speak. He declined the spotlight but agreed to send a recorded message. The screen lit up on the day of the event, his voice calm, his presence quiet. "Justice," he said, "isn't a courtroom word. It's a community practice. It's how we treat the unseen, how we listen before we judge, how we restore what prejudice tried to destroy." He paused. "If you take anything from my story, let it be this: dignity should never need a witness to exist." That line spread faster than any news clip. It became the slogan of a new awareness campaign run by youth advocates. Dignity does not need permission. Shirts, posters, street murals, hashtags, but more importantly, conversations. Real ones. The closing scene fades in on a city at dusk. The camera glides down Cole Avenue. Streetlights hum. Laughter echoes from the park. The mural glows softly under a single spotlight. A voice, Darius's, overlays the image. Have you ever seen a city learn to breathe again? I have. It starts with one wrong moment and ends with 1,000 small rights. Share if you believe dignity should never need permission.